And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining today. It's now January 21st, 2023, which is coincidentally Chinese New Year's Eve. So happy Chinese New Year to everyone. It's been quite some time since my last live stream. Been away on vacation and I've just recently got back. So it's good to be back and lots of business news that's been going on this past week or so. None more so than the first news that we're going to discuss, which is Marvel's resurgence or coming back in the China market, which is obviously a big source of their revenue, which is they've been out for a few years. I think since the Avengers Endgame was last shown. Also, we'll be talking about how Tesla's prices have been dropping, which is this a sign of turbulent things to occur or to happen with regards to Tesla cars or EV demand in general here? So we'll take a look at that. On the other hand, HBO, or in this case, the streaming services HBO Max, has seen their prices increase, and it's not just them, but other streaming services has capitalized on the increased demand of their services, being able to command not significant increase in price, but nonetheless an increase in price that won't affect many of the viewers there. So how long can those streaming services keep that up? We'll take a look at that as well. And next is some local news wherein, what's interesting and sad to say that many of our, skilled individuals who are trained here in our country are getting better offers abroad, and none more so than one of the more crucial individuals, which is being an air traffic controller here, and being offered a significant bump in terms of pay scale is it's a indication that our government has to do a better job of providing better pay for our employees and fellow countrymen, rather than export our their talents overseas. And lastly, we'll be talking about Amazon, for all of their benefits that they brought us with their e-commerce platform and whatnot. It's still the problem that persists, that how they treat the customers, their partners, the resellers, even in the case of employees. And sad to say, in this scenario, lay off tens of thousands of employees, and that's not even the worst part. And being laid off through an informal method by getting an email that you're getting laid off is even worse. So we'll take a look at that. So without further ado, so let's get it started with our first topic. As mentioned, for quite some time, Marvel has been, on a downward spiral in terms of box office performance, with some, hits with likes of Marvel Spider-Man No Way Home. But with the rest, it has been a mishmash of mediocre to average results, from Black Widow to even Black Panther 2, which could have done much better. Now, obviously, this past few years they haven't been able to capitalize on a large market, which is the China market in the East. And interesting enough, they are able to find a way to appease the government so that they are able to release their films at present here, which is a good sign for the company. But at what expense did they trade off their ability to produce those films? Did they have to concede a lot of things? Who knows? Anyway, according to the article here at CNBC.com, they mentioned that Marvel movies are set to return to China, but there's always caveat, which is COVID could weigh in on the ticket sales. Which is, if you're not familiar, the situation in China is still ravaging regarding the COVID situation, and the zero tolerance policy has a tremendous effect on the economy, and let alone people going to their normal daily lives, which is entertainment, watching films and whatnot. Now, as mentioned here, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies will return to China in February, which is next month, which is a good news for the studio for nearly 4 years. And what's interesting is Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever, will hit in February. Then you have Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania will follow shortly here. And the question is, will it reach significant heights where Black Panther, the first one with Chadwick Boseman, reach its heights? I'm very skeptical in terms of its performance, but I think obviously having more markets, more eyeballs watching the film will always generate more revenue here. The question is, will it reach the same levels as the previous one? Only time can tell. Now, it's also mentioned here that box office analyst is concerned regarding piracy, which is always a concern, and how the studios deal with it is also important. And COVID could hurt the movies' growth in China. And obviously, it's not just the American films, foreign films, but domestically. If people are not able to watch because it's not safe or there's lockdowns that's going on, it's going to hurt it's just the entertainment, but businesses in general, which is not ideal for any individual here. And obviously, being able to release those films is always a key part for the studio, since they're trying to go back to the box office performance that they're accustomed of reaching, close to a billion or even beyond a billion or even more, similar to how the Avengers Endgame capitalized on its at its peak here. And the last film that was able to be shown was Spider-Man's Far From Home in 2019. And then the controversial Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was not approved for release. Obviously, Black Widow was not blacklisted, but it coincided with the a blackout period in China because of of extenuating circumstances here, and obviously it affected the subsequent release of other films here, and obviously coupled that, could hurt the bottom line for Marvel Studios. What's interesting here is how big of a chunk of the international market, in particular the China market, has an effect in the Marvel movies here. So let's take a closer look. So you can see here the global sales. So it started way back in 2008 from Iron Man. It only generated 2% from the China market. But as you notice here, as the years passed by, it was steadily growing from Iron Man 3 to 10%. You have Captain America, the Winter Soldier with 16%, as high as Ant-Man 20%, the low teens, high teens, and you can see here maybe with Black Panther not doing as well, but it still generated 1.3 billion dollars in the box office, and you can see here, it's in the tens, low tens, high tens percentage in terms of the revenue, and obviously that's not a small amount that you can ignore. And obviously, as a business, you try to find ways to be able to reach the market and at any expense, and obviously at what expense. Who knows what arrangement did they have between the studio and the government that would appease the government so that they could release all of their films in the subsequent feature. Only time can tell if uh, this will pan out for the studio here. Who knows? Anyway, continuing with our story with regards to companies, are struggling, in particular the EV market, in terms of Tesla having to slash their prices now. Why are they slashing their price? Because of low demand, poor sales. Could be a lot of factors here. But what's interesting here, it's not just isolated in one particular region, but in different countries as well. And question is, how would this affect their overall outlook for Elon Musk moving forward? So in this article, according to the driven.io, Tesla is slashing their EV prices by up to 19,000 Australian dollars. In US, more cuts in Australia may follow here. So, reducing $20,000, it's pretty significant. The fact that they can charge a significant amount and people were still buying it in years past. And maybe the demand for EV vehicles may not be as high as one would like to think. And obviously, I myself is very apprehensive because adoption of new technology, in particular electric vehicles, is a very difficult thing to overcome in terms of many limitations of batteries, the charging capability of how long it takes to be charged, and even if the Tesla is able to offer the superchargers that they mentioned that could charge in less than an hour, but it's not a plenty. And I've been in the United States and traveling around the West Coast. There are EV chargers out there, but it's not superchargers, so there are still limitations. And the fact that it's traveling from one place to another, and you have to travel long distance, to be fully reliant on electric powered is very disconcerting. Now having a hybrid powered engine, that's something I could live with, as long as you're able to maximize the usage of the electricity plus the combustion here. Anyway, looking further, Tesla started the year in Australia last week by shaving thousands of the price of an electric vehicle for existing order holders and new customers. Which, what's kind of funny. This happened also in China, and for China consumers, they're in uprising, complaining regarding why they want their orders to be reduced in terms of price as well, because of the change in the pricing. Obviously that could complicate things, and would this hurt their sales and so forth. But that's for another discussion here. Anyway, so it mentions here that new Tesla has heavily slashed prices in the US, making the discounts offered in Australia look comparatively tiny. So the new prices just announced are up 23% lower for the Tesla Model Y performance SUV, a savings of around $13,000 or 19,000 Australian dollars. Now, US prices have traditionally remained high during 2022 as Tesla navigated through COVID-19 supply chain issues, as well as the ramp up of the newest, largest Texas Gigafactory. Now, obviously, demand for EV is very popular since it's an American automaker in the United States. But for other regions, obviously, if your product is flawed or if the infrastructure is not laid out, obviously that's going to cause a lot of second thoughts from the many buyers here before they even consider investing a significant chunk of their income or savings to buying an electric vehicle that's not going to last them for decades here. And we've seen the margins and reduction, just tells you how much they're charging for those vehicles, and they're still making money despite the reduction. So if we take a closer look, Tesla's high margin and reduction in the cost of production have meant that the prices across the Model 3 and Model Y range have been reduced too. So for the Tesla Model 3 rear wheel drive, so reduced from 46 or $47,000 to 44,000. So 4,000 difference. Then the Model 3 performance reduction from 63 to 54. That's almost 8,000 difference. Then you have the Model Y long range, 66,000 to just 53. So, a reduction of 7,000 here. And then finally for the Y performance, from 70,000 to just 57. So more than 10,000 of reduction here. And obviously it just goes to show you how much they're marking up for the vehicles here, for the privilege to own a vehicles and not necessarily own it outright because of the if you're planning on fully utilizing their software feature in terms of the full self-driving features, you have to pony up another $10,000 to be able to use those features, which is again in previous past videos that I've been against the marketing strategy of Tesla, saying that it's fully autonomous, and the fact that it's nowhere even close. It's only level 2, but to be fully autonomous, you have to reach level 5, which is they're nowhere near close to that aspect, which is another whole lot of discussion here. Anyway, uh, the lowering of prices could be a boon for many in prospecting buyer, because it's mentioned here that lowering prices will mean that more Tesla EVs will become more eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act here now. Whether that's convincing a lot of people, sure, that could increase more interest in buyers, but at the end of the day, is it even practical owning an fully electric vehicle, or is it more practical to own first a hybrid? Then we'll see decades later if electric vehicle is really the way of the future here, because if your battery runs out, who's going to push your vehicle? And it's not as if you could just push to the next gas station and get it gassed up, refuel your batteries, and then you're on your way. So there's still a lot of issues, but the Elon Musk Tesla's company is making a lot of headway, but it's still an uphill battle. So we'll still have to wait and see how it progresses. Anyway, on the other side, of the flip side, if companies have to reduce because of low demand for whatever reason, on the other case, streaming services like HBO Max, even Netflix has increased their prices, even so slightly because of, for whatever reason, costs are up, so you have to match your revenue by increasing the prices. But obviously, increasing the price too much can affect the bottom line in terms of gaining more subscribers or streaming viewers for your platform. Anyway, in the case of HBO Max, hike subscription prices as it deletes even more content. Now, if you're not familiar, HBO Max has merged with Discovery Channel, if you're familiar, and I've grown out watching a lot of interesting contents from Discovery, from the Mythbusters and what else did I watch there? OCC, the Orange County Choppers, if you're familiar with that TV show, long time ago, and even Tank was one of the series I frequently watch at the way back. Anyway, so question is, why are they increasing their price here? As mentioned, the price for of ad-free HBO Max is increasing this month after a year of service removing content from the service here. Now, following the prices by Apple TV Plus, Netflix, and other companies, even Warner Brothers, is hiking the price of HBO Max. So the new subscription will now cost $16 a month, an extra dollar from the old price. So it may not be significant for many, but obviously, if you consider the millions of subscribers that the Warner Brothers or HBO has, it increases that much. So if you have 50 million subscribers, it's an additional 50 million. If you have 100 million subscribers, that's an additional 100 million that the company is going to generate each month. So obviously, are they using it wisely by creating more content, compelling content, so that consumers are buying or watching? In my case, I haven't gotten to that threshold of having multiple streaming services here, and now I only have my Netflix streaming account, and I think that's more than a plenty for my case. But unless HBO can provide more compelling case, obviously having the Game of Thrones series is very interesting, and we'll see. But for the rest, the increase may not be drastic, but obviously there's always a threshold that consumers are willing to pay, and how much. And if by then, if they're not happy with the prices, they'll just switch it off and look for a different subscription or different streaming services here. So question is, are you subscribed to HBO Max here? Maybe you need to look for somewhere else for better entertainment here, which is there's a plenty, which is kind of confusing from the TV network back in the old days, to the cable TV wars, and now the streaming network wars here. Anyway, for some local news, we mentioned earlier that it's quite interesting, in particular in our case here in the Philippines, that many of our skilled people are being pirated overseas for better, better paycheck, significantly better paycheck compared to if you were to stay here at home. And no amount of patriotism is going to help because of not being able to support yourself or even support your family here. And then more so in the case of a very technical, very dangerous job, if you don't do it right, lives could be at stake here. So let's take a closer look. So according to philstar.com, Philippine is losing the air traffic controllers due to pay disparity. And that's saying a lot, because it's not just the air traffic controllers that we're talking about. You have nurses that's working abroad, overseas Filipino workers that that we are so proud of, that the government is so proud of, which is kind of abysmal if you think about it. Why do we have to send our fellow countrymen abroad if our own country can provide the income that we so desire, a better livelihood, better paycheck for our family and whatnot. And in this case, it's not so different with the issue of the air traffic controllers. And take note, the air traffic controllers' role is to navigate the complexity of incoming and outgoing of aircrafts. Depending on how busy is the airport, with the likes of, maybe let's say, in Singapore, maybe in Japan, or even in Hong Kong, or even in the United States, in JFK, in New York, or even in LAX, in Los Angeles, or even in Heathrow in London. And obviously, the busier the airport, obviously you need capable uh, individuals who can handle the stress of managing several things at a time, and handle it well, so that it doesn't create confusion and even catastrophe, which we haven't heard. But obviously you want to train them, and the sad part is many of those individuals are being trained here locally, and then being recruited abroad for a better paycheck here, which is kind of sad, which I think the government could do something about it by increasing the pay rates, not just for the air traffic controllers, but many of our government employees, which they so deserve, which is a whole lot of issues that needs another discussion here. Anyway, it mentions here that the Philippines is suffering from a brain drain of aviation experts, particularly of air traffic officers, as the salary offered here can no longer compete with the given in the Middle East. The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines yesterday asked the government to raise the pay of air traffic controllers facilities to encourage them to stay in the country. Well, encourage is not the key to entice them to stay. You have to, at the very least, compete with other nations, or provide a better livelihood for those individuals, because obviously if it's a high risk job, there has to be a high reward or high compensation in this aspect. And if that's not the case, then what's in it for them? Then why should they stay? So it's as if they're staying here temporarily, so they gain their experience, and other nations, other countries are benefiting for our laws. And it's not just employees. We have even athletes that's being pirated abroad. That the athlete I last remember is the grand I don't know if he's a grandmaster, Michael Saw, which was recruited. He became a American citizen because of that, which is kind of disappointing for our case. Here, the CAAP Director General Manuel Antonio Tamayo said the agency is losing aviation talent mostly to the Middle East, where the starting salary is up to 6 times higher than what they're getting here. That's pretty abysmal if you think about it. 6 times, that's not a small amount of difference. That's a pretty significant increase. I mean, the fact that other countries can offer twice the amount or even 3 times the amount is already enough to convince other people to jump ship. If I were given that opportunity, obviously I'm not a air traffic controller, but and it mentions here that is the problem. We are not hiring our air traffic controllers, so our air traffic controllers are being pirated abroad. We are having issues because of pay and so on. In terms of qualification, we can train Filipinos, we can make them excellent in this field, but the problem is the pay that we offer them. which is kind of sad. And I think it's just like with any companies. When you hire someone, when you invest a lot of time and effort, especially a lot of money invested by paying their salary and their training, you want to hold on to them, because the longer that you retain them, the cost of retaining is even lower. But if you keep on changing or replacing those competent employees, the cost will be significantly high, which is not being taken into account if uh, businesses, or even in this case governments, don't take this salary discrepancy seriously here, which is, it's going to persist, and it's not going to be good for any of either side. And what's interesting here, the starting salary in Dubai for air traffic control is around close to 400,000 pesos monthly, and plus free housing. So that's additional benefit. Now, here in the Philippines, uh, uh, a salary grade of 20 is only 51,000 a month. So that's not even counting the the tax that you're going to pay, and the anguish, the risk that you have to take, the burden, the pressure that comes with the territory. I think requires a significant uptick in paycheck here. Otherwise, you're doing it just for heart, and I don't think you can do that if you're trying planning or starting your own family here. Now, in response, the Commissioner Gideon Mortel said that GCC will look into the pay issue of air traffic. Looking into it is means nothing if you don't act upon it, which is kind of sad, because it's not a current problem, has been persisting for quite some time. You know, and making promise, he vowed that the agency tasked to oversee state-run firms like CAP is studying every option to improve air traffic management. Well, the improvement is by increasing the price, and yet, we're talking about bureaucracy at its finest here, which is, if you recall, earlier this year, in January 1, there was a loss of communication and power outage that shut down Manila's airspace, which, you know, s- thankfully I wasn't still here. I wasn't back by then. I think about a week later. But anyway, because if you don't take care of those very crucial to the operations, could significantly hamper the overall experience, and even could lives could be at stake here if they're mismanaged improperly here. Hoping that they are able to address it, rather than a lot of just air talk, or of sorts. Anyway, lastly, for our last story, we were talking about earlier regarding how Amazon, despite being one of the best tech story companies in the world, in terms of how Jeff Bezos have grown that company way back in the early 90s, mid 90s, to where it is today, is tremendous, especially of being a pioneer of providing e-commerce platform, and then offering cloud services with their Amazon Web Services. But the problem is, the persisting, obviously, they have made a lot of money in creating those big businesses, but at what expense? And not taking care of their employees, especially the Amazon workers in the warehouse in particular. How are they taking of those employee who has to go back to work, especially during the height of the pandemic, where safety is a major issue, and it's a whole lot of another controversy. And now, with a slight downtick with performance, laying off of employees is terrible in itself. But how being laid off is another very inhumane way of treating people, treating as if they're insignificant part of the organization. And according to the insiders.com, Amazon employees learned that they were laid off by email. Not even the balls, the gulls to use managers, the HR, to fire them face to face, and not even have the courage. And having to read that in real life would be terrible here. And I don't know what's the logic to make it expedite. Sure, it would be easier, but again, there will be consequences. That's why many of the employees, I think in the previous video we discussed regarding of them raising what do you call this, raising a union, and then they're dead against it. Obviously it's not to the detriment to the organization, but if this keeps on persisting, asking unrealistic expectation from your employees, and you're setting up a collision sometime down in the future. And what's mentioned here, Amazon notified their laid off employees by email and not face to face. And Amazon is going through the largest layoff in the company history, affecting 18,000 people. And yet, many of the top managers in the organization are still getting the paycheck here. So what's that about? Anyway, and what's interesting, the ambiguity is adding the anxiety of employees feel at Amazon. So obviously, what they're doing may not necessarily be illegal, but it's highly unethical and immoral if you're a human person here. And we'll try to stay glued with this situation on what's going on with Amazon here. And even though Jeff Bezos is not helming the company here, but he still owns majority share of the company here. But still, I have nothing against about the company, but doing this action that's not pro consumers, not pro the employees, is only pro for management, and that's in it, they're in it for themselves in the long run here, which is no way to run a business here, because people will grow to resent the company, and and you need those employees to support the organization as a whole, whether you're at the bottom, at the middle, or even top management here. Anyway, that's it for this week. So it's good to be back. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. If you enjoy these types of content, you can check out my other videos every Wednesdays for business updates, and on Mondays for Monday checklist. Leave your comments down below, and I'll try to get back to you. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and Happy New Year, Chinese New Year at that.